An old book. Book about witchcraft.
You're listening to the Whitewood Podcast, a show about mystery schools, the occult, and witchcraft.
Would you like to have a look around?
Why have you come to Whitewood?
Well, because I'm interested in witchcraft.
I'm your host, Nate. Come with us as we delve into the history, techniques, and backstories of these traditions and the people who practice them.
Welcome back to the Whitewood Podcast. My name is Nate Driscoll. This week, we are going to interview another practitioner. And the practitioner that we've brought on for this week is a friend of mine. Her name is Woventear. I hope you guys enjoy the episode. All right. So, welcome back to the Whitewood Podcast. My name is Nate Driscoll. How are you, Wovie?
I am good. How about you?
I'm doing fantastic.
Cool.
So, let's see. I haven't seen you in, 2 weeks? A week? Did I see you last Sunday?
I think so. Last Sunday.
Last Sunday, because we did something for the solstice.
Yes. Summer solstice.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I struggle to introduce other people because I don't ever want to define them and be like, hey, you are this individual. You are a Wiccan. You are a witch. You are a practitioner. You are a, whatever the thing is. I prefer to let people define themselves. So how would you define yourself as far as magic goes? As far as your personal tradition? Who are you?
Personal tradition, let me say. First of all, I think I have developed my own tradition. Within the last 10 years, I've taught what I've learned, and I've taught it to the community, which would be the Treasure Valley Witches. And anything over 10 years is considered a tradition. So I'm thinking that that's my tradition. So it's an eclectic collection of the things that I've experienced in my life.
Yeah.
So magic is witchcraft, or whatever it is that people believe in is a form of whatever they want it to be.
Right.
So basically, Wicca is a religion that I'm not too hep on.
Okay.
Basically because the old religions were treated like, oh, I'll do this, but I won't do this.
Okay.
And
dogmatic, is that what you mean?
Yes.
Where like there's a set rule of what you will and will not do in accordance with whatever your religious belief is.
Right.
So like in the case of like Christianity, I use that one as a reference a lot, even though most of the people that come on the show are not Christian. Most people have at least experienced Christianity because we live in the United States. So we know someone, and it kind of acts as like a good, like everyone knows this, the general practices of this one. And so a lot of times we'll fall back to it as like an example. But so like, for example, dogmatically in Christianity, you might like say, well, they have the 10 Commandments, for example, or they have like, you're not, my parents are Mormon. In their case, they don't drink. So those might be examples of like dogmatic, specific things where you are and are not allowed to. Is that kind of what you mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
Definitely.
And you mentioned Wicca. Would you identify as like a witch, a practitioner, where are you at with all that?
I would say my religion would be voodoo, the practice of Ifa.
Okay.
I was just
There you go.
Initiated into Ifa. And so that's my religion, I guess. So there are forms of structure there that a lot of people don't like or do like. It doesn't really matter. But
Right. Yeah.
Witchcraft is not a religion, I guess. Witchcraft is a technique or a way of life that...
Yeah, I've been, over the past couple episodes and guests and stuff, I've been trying to kind of bring... I do think that the magical traditions in general constitute some form of a spiritual path. That they are most definitely a set of tools to understand your own relationship with, the divine and to empower you in your life, the same way that you might find from like a more traditional religion. But I definitely understand people drawing a line between them because sometimes religion kind of gets treated as a naughty word in our society where individuals who are saying, well, my religion are often using that word in order to, interpret what other people's actions should be. They often are being dogmatic about, what I should make other people do or what I should do myself. So I can understand the perspective. I don't think that it's right or wrong to consider witchcraft to be a religion. I can understand some people coming from it from the, hey, but, I have a god and a goddess, and I have, specific rites and rituals, and I regularly do these things because it is building me up and I'm getting something positive out of it. And if the word religion to you means that, then I think it's okay for you to use the word religion in order to describe witchcraft. If the word religion to you means I'm going to go sit in a church and I'm going to force other people in order to see things my way, and if they don't, then they're evil, and there's this place that we've reserved for them in our mythology to like punish them for that, then I wouldn't consider witchcraft to be a religion. I'd consider it to be kind of its own separate thing.
Yeah, definitely. I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you have been doing voodoo. What does that mean?
Voodoo is another set of rules and regulations, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's working with the dead.
Okay.
As anybody would work. And of course, all of the spirits or gods or goddesses are all dead anyway, I guess, So voodoo is just a different aspect of working spiritually with the dead.
Okay. And when you say dead, do you mean like specific individuals throughout history, or do you mean like working with your particular ancestors, or do you mean kind of a mix of the both, or
both? Okay. Basically my ancestors. I believe that they're around you or us all the time, and so working with your ancestors help you elevate them and us in a life.
Sure.
Our life, this path.
Absolutely.
Guess. Yeah.
You mentioned initiation. I would never ask anybody, especially on this show, because we have so many people who are initiated into paths, to divulge anything that they have taken oaths to protect, obviously. I myself have been initiated into stuff and don't talk about the specifics. If you were to slip up, you're always welcome to let me know, and we can remove it before we publish it. But as far as initiation, what does that mean? What is an initiation?
It's a set of exercises or tasks that you should do to want to do, I guess, to prove your worthiness to the spirits.
Yeah, it's kind of like some kind of it depends on the tradition that you come from, and that's why I ask, is because, so I kind of follow the tradition of Thelema. In Thelema, we have, an organized initiatory structure. And ours is, I always have to watch exactly how I word this.
Right.
It's a fun game.
Well, I kind of know. So.
Yeah. So we have like different degrees that individuals are brought into. And many of them are things that people can choose to do. Some of them are up higher with more of the structure of keeping things going. Those can be invite only. But most of the degrees are, things where people can make a personal choice, and they mark specific points in one's life and specific important mysteries to contemplate during the stages of one's life to help add depth and meaning in that phase. I would say
it's a value.
Sure.
It's a value to you only. And that's what makes it important too.
And I would say the more you put into it, the more you get out of it.
That's right. Definitely.
Would you say that applies to all magic?
I think it applies to everything. Yeah. Whatever we believe, everything.
Would you say even mundane stuff that applies to?
Yeah.
I guess I didn't think about it until you said everything. But it's true. Like your career, you will get more out of your career if you put more of yourself into it.
Cooking.
Yeah.
Baking.
Absolutely.
Everything. Yeah.
Yep.
Whatever you do.
Yeah, absolutely. Anything. Art, studying, learning, anything. And that's definitely true for the magical traditions. I would say the more that you put yourself into it, the more you're going to get out of it. And that's generally why I usually say, and I wonder if you agree with this, or if, that if you're going to do it, just go all in, to I think that some individuals, I guess I shouldn't make a set of guidelines that like, oh, you have to do it my way by any means. There's definitely some value to just putting one foot in the pool.
Well, there's an ultimate way to do things.
Yeah.
Like somebody has been or traveled that path before you, can give you pointers on saying, hey, you can do this and rather not this, and end up in a better position.
Right.
Or it's like cooking. I always do baking cookies. Everybody knows how to bake cookies, right?
Oh, I'm terrible at baking cookies.
Well, but you got a recipe.
I could with a recipe, and that's
Right.
kind of what you're talking about,
And
right?
then I could give you some
Right.
tips because I bake cookies really well.
Right.
And I could give you some
And you've been
tips.
baking for many years, and you can
Yes.
tell me.
And I can tell you what you can do to make those cookies better.
Right. And potentially, I might still, and that's actually a really good analogy, because when it comes to the spirituality that is the magical traditions, it's okay for me to kind of do it my own way, to have my own recipe, to bake it,
Right.
my own specific way. And it's also okay that I go, hey, Wovie, I'm not getting as much fluff. Should I add some more butter? Oh, okay. I can add a little bit more butter and see how that turns out. And
Add
that
more
doesn't.
flour, though.
Sure.
Not
sure.
better.
Oh, okay. Yeah. See, I'm not a baker.
There's the tip.
But yeah, but at the end of the day, I can still bake the cookies how I please. That it's not that you're like in my house with a gun to my head saying, you put 2 cups of flour in there or else.
Right.
It's very much, and that's one thing that I find is very different with magical traditions versus other spiritual paths. Not to say that all of them are dogmatic, and not to say that even all Christian branches are like this, but there tends to be more of an allowance towards certain types of behaviors that are a little more forceful in non-magical traditions, while magical traditions tend to be, you need to decide how you're going to do it. I can give you some pointers, and hopefully the recipe works for you.
Yeah.
That's kind of where I'm at with that. Well, let's see. So you work with ancestors. You said you were initiated. What types of things would you do for a working? Let's say you have some goal in mind. Well, I suppose we should talk about that. What is a magical working to you? What does that mean?
Well, it's a lot. In fact, I do magic every day. It's all part of my life, I guess, to make the day go better than what I think it should be going. I light a candle every day
There you
for
go.
different
That's a perfect example.
aspects.
Okay.
I do affirmations for the universe, for my people, for my group, for clients.
Yeah.
I do with clients. So an average working would be basically getting myself prepared, getting the ingredients, candles, herbs,
Okay.
potions, lotions, whatever,
Sure. Absolutely.
to get all those together to raise the
You
vibration.
mentioned lighting a candle for different things each day. What kinds of things would you be doing?
Mainly clients,
Okay.
or mainly myself,
Sure.
creating the vibration in the house to keep it
Absolutely.
higher.
Yep, absolutely. When I first got started in magical traditions in general, when I was a kid, I was raised in a Mormon household, as I've already said, and I realized pretty early on it wasn't really for me. And I'm happy that my parents are getting something out of it. It's definitely been positive for them, but for myself, I wasn't getting that thing out of it, and so it felt like destructive. It didn't feel positive for me. It wasn't building me up. And so eventually I did what I think a lot of people do, which is, if this doesn't work, what's the opposite of it? And with the limited tools that I had at that age, I didn't really know what else was out there. And so I opted for, magical traditions and stuff. The first one that I really knew of at that time was Wicca. That was kind of my launching off point. And then over the years, this Wicca thing's working to a certain point, but I'm really drawn towards this whole paganism thing. And, this paganism thing's working, but I'm really drawn towards this Norse paganism thing. It's more specific. And then eventually kind of getting around to finding myself in the Thelemic circle and being like, oh, this is it. This is the thing for me. I feel
Resonates with
me specifically. And at the end of the day, I don't think that it's wrong for someone else to have the same experience with other stuff. So for example, maybe you started off, and I know this isn't the case, this is just an example, but let's say you started off with Thelema and you were like, oh, hey, I can kind of take some positive things about this, but I'm getting a little bit more out of this other thing, and for you to transition into that other one until you found this place where you're, vibing and comfortable the most, where did you make your start? What did you immediately just go straight into voodoo? And I do know people who started off in the same path that they do today, that was 10, 15, 20 years ago. And they're like, yeah, I just started this one and stuck with it and it's been great. Or did you transition through a couple of different things and pick up a little bit off this one and a little bit off that one? Or
I transitioned. I just was introduced to voodoo a few years ago. It's been about 4 or 5 years, I think, maybe 6 years. I can't remember. But yeah, I traveled overseas. I experienced a lot, and which was really, I'm blessed in that aspect because I like to I like to have the experiences so that I can experience and say, this is really good. I can work with this. Again, like you were saying, that you can work with a little bit, but then this aspect doesn't resonate with you.
Right.
So, Buddhism, Hinduism, of course, Hinduism and Buddhism is very structured also, but it teaches you self,
right.
all about yourself. And when you learn about yourself,
it's an internal path.
Right.
They give you a lot of tools, but they're like, the path is inside. You need to walk it on your own. I can't,
right.
I can give you tools, but I have noticed that about Buddhism and
shamanism.
Hinduism.
Those were the things that I needed in my life, I guess, to work out myself.
Yeah, like you transition into one, you get what you needed out of it, you find yourself moving on to the next. And that's one thing that I said in an earlier episode that I vibe with a lot, is that the magical traditions is like a passport to be able to move amongst the nations that are all these different spiritual traditions. It's like, I can go do some practices from Buddhism for a couple of months, a couple of years, and maybe really dive into it. But that I still have the ability to like pull my passport back out, go back over to something else that's working. And nobody considers that weird in the occult. Like, it's really normal. Like when somebody's like, oh yeah, I just spent 7 months being a Buddhist. I'm like, oh cool, how was that?
Right. Right.
Yeah,
I agree with that. That's definitely it's hard to be Buddhist anyway.
It is.
It is so hard. But
I don't. Oh, man, I take a lot from it. I do.
I did too. But it was like it was like, okay, I quit.
Yeah.
I just like give up.
Sure. Found something that vibed with you better. There's nothing wrong with that.
No, I teach a lot, and so all the experiences that I've been through, is basically what I've experienced. And I like to tell people that don't tell any, there's a couple of people that say, hey, I want to be this. And I'm going, okay, go do that.
Right.
Be that.
Right.
And then they find out they can't be that, or
they can't because they struggle with some of the things that they need to do, internally. Or they can't, as in the group is telling them they can't.
And they struggle with the things they need to do.
Sure. Okay.
Or they need to step up to the game or whatever, and they are not able to do that.
Right.
And I say that's great. Now respect that part and move forward.
Right.
Don't disregard it as something bad. Keep it in your faith that it is something that helped you grow into what you are now.
Right.
And the same way with Christianity, it's something that helped us grow to where we are now. And if it wasn't there, if our parents hadn't have, made us do this, we wouldn't be here in that aspect, I guess.
I agree. I think it's all as positive as what you're getting out of it. And that includes some of the things that people consider to be darker. Voodoo has a connotation to it. I have seen and experienced enough voodoo stuff to not feel uncomfortable about voodoo. However, people who have not seen and experienced some of the things that myself and you have experienced, I do see them recoil back a little bit at the very name of it. They're like, oh my gosh, that's pretty extreme. But their vision of it is something that they've pulled out of like television, out of like movies and media. And I find that the depictions of magical traditions is incredibly inaccurate on those types of things. Just like when I watch, like if I watch an episode of a television, anything that I know, the more that I learn about a specific topic, the more that I realize how fake Hollywood is. So like if I know a lot about cars, I'll watch, Fast and the Furious, and I'll go, oh my God, that's a ridiculous scene. Like none of that was even like remotely possible. What a stupid movie this is. And that is extremely true for the occult, because like, they'll be like, oh, it's voodoo. And it's like, well, there's like one dude chopping the head off of a chicken, and it's just not, it's not like a, number one, it's not respectful to people who believe that tradition to portray them in that way, which is a very serious conversation we should be having in the 21st century. But number two, it's never very realistic. What do you think? Do you agree or disagree? And if you disagree, why?
I agree to a certain point where people, withdraw from that because they're uneducated.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think that once if you don't like it or anything like that, be educated about it so that you can learn about it. Of course, chopping the heads off of chickens, everybody did it before so we could eat.
Sure. It was like part of your getting ready for dinner. Might as well work some magic into it.
Yeah, definitely.
Absolutely. I can understand that.
That's a food source. It's also, respectful of the chicken, where the chicken is giving you something.
Right.
And you give something in return to that chicken.
Absolutely.
You reverence it. You experience, you cook it and eat it and share it with the family and all of that.
Yeah.
So,
and, down that same kind of road of thought, the Norse pagan traditions, which are gaining a lot of traction in the United States now. They're becoming big. It's like interesting.
Really big.
Yeah. It's like a second explosion of Odinism. It's very interesting. So them, for example, they had what's called the blot.
Yeah.
And a blot is, a specific rite or ritual that in ancient times included the sacrifice of some agricultural animal, usually a cow, and they would ritualistically harvest the cow and then cook the cow and then consume the cow. And that was part of this, this bringing the community together in worship, in adoration. And that included at one point animal sacrifice, right? But it wasn't, you didn't just kill the cow for no reason.
Right.
You were consuming it as a community,
and you groomed that cow for that specific
purpose.
Thing. Yeah,
exactly. Definitely. And it's not like, Judaism and Christianity didn't have their days of doing animal sacrifice as well. There were definitely, times where there are, the sacred sheep or the, things like that. The ram would be Abrahamic,
right?
Abraham
almost
even sacrificing his own son towards, as an animal sacrifice. So there's definitely something to be said about, how that's kind of worked into everything. But for some reason, it is the only image that comes up in the mind when we talk about voodoo. And I think that that's just an unfair media portrayal of groups and individuals.
There's bloodless traditions.
Absolutely.
And, we have a house in Boise, and so and it morphs into something that works for all of us as a group or as a house.
Right.
We do workings for people, and it's the same as health, wealth, abundance, taking care of the earth, taking care of our community and everything. So it's a bunch of people doing what they like and how it works with them, with the dead, and what tradition it is. It works. Definitely.
Now, are you guys working with specific entities? Like when I think of voodoo and hoodoo, the names that kind of come to mind are like Papa Legba and Baron Samedi and, those types of, entities. Are there specific ones? They have a lot, and there's also multiple branches. Are there specific ones that you find yourself and your community working with?
There are specific ones, yes.
Okay.
The La Sirène, Baron Samedi, Agun, Tressely. There's a lot of them. And they help us reach our goals for our court, the people on our court, our ancestors and everything. We help elevate other spirits in the spirit world.
Sure.
Too. Yeah.
And what does that look like when, like, for example, let's say you're working with one particular entity. How would that differ from working with a different entity? Like if you're working with one today and on Wednesday you're going to work with a different one. Do you adapt a lot of that ritual towards like some of their symbols?
Yeah,
like,
we
for
honor
example,
their symbols, their veves.
Yeah.
We honor them.
Okay.
We just had a celebration of a little bit ago, with honoring the house spirits,
Okay.
giving them honor and thanks, feeding them, you
Right.
know, definitely.
Yep. And it's really similar. Like, for example, Hinduism often has some form of a god, some form of an incarnation of a god, some set of symbols, some symbolic entity that they'll have like a physical representation in the home, on like a specific table, altar, those kind of things. And they'll offer incense, and maybe they'll regularly wash the item. Then maybe they'll leave out food for that particular entity or spirit or incarnation. I've noticed a lot of similarities between that form of worship, adoration, and working with something and most of the magical traditions, not to say all. Would you say that's accurate to voodoo, that you might have like some physical representation of any of them, really, and then you might like leave some food out for them or those types of things?
Yes.
That's kind of what
Food,
you would...
water, definitely all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember when I was first getting started and just kind of like dipping my toe in that water, a common one that was coming up a lot in my workings was tobacco, to be leaving, like, especially certain entities that, are written down over past traditions to be either like cigars or chewing tobacco or those kind of things. That was coming up a lot. Specific types of food for specific entities where like one might have a preference.
Yeah, they have preferences.
Yeah.
And they let you know what they are. And definitely
Yeah.
cigars are a big part of that tradition. I smoke cigars all the time.
Yep.
And certain types of wines, Moscatos, La Sirène, for instance, wants a mirror. And of course, she's the queen of the sea. She is over the ocean, the world's largest graveyard.
Right.
Definitely, every tradition has sacrifices.
I believe that's true. Yeah.
Even Wicca had sacrifices, but they cut them
Absolutely.
all out, after I was born. Even like I'm kind of the same age as Wicca. That's the part I don't like either, too.
What's
It's
that?
being the same age as Wicca,
Sure.
as the
Yeah, Wicca
religion.
Wicca is a tradition that
It's
presents
new.
itself as being a specific age,
right.
and there's not a whole lot of archaeological evidence to suggest that it is the age that it claims to be.
But there's
totally things that are passed
sacrifices, too.
down. To be fair to them, and I always want to be as fair to as many different types of people as possible. The elements is a main central point in Wicca, and the elements have been passed down for as long as we as a species remember. That like there has been some form of representation of earth, air, fire, and water
For a long time.
for as long as we have record. And it even includes like traditions like Christianity was doing it in the 10th to 16th century. So it's not even like it didn't even skip religions and like come back. The elements has been passed down since forever. And so that's a perfect example of how there are definitely aspects of it that are very, very old and have been passed down since forever. And so out of respect for them, I definitely agree with that. But archaeologically, academically, we don't have a whole lot of evidence of anything happening before with Gardner and the 50s abouts.
Right. But
Yeah,
there
a little
is
later than the 50s.
there for that. Yeah.
Yeah.
There is yeah. I'm trying to think. And it was mostly archaeology too. It was mostly who was that woman that discovered some of that stuff. I can't remember.
Are
But
you talking about Gardner's female compadre, the Doreen?
wasn't she an archaeologist?
I don't remember what
No,
she did, to be honest.
There was an
I know that he
archaeologist.
popularized a lot of it. First kind of came out as like, hey, these traditions are out there, and his work circulates around this idea that it was passed to him from some outside source, but that they didn't want to identify themselves. And so his work, and it's complicated, because he met with Aleister Crowley in 47, and much of his work is very similar to Crowley's work. And so we don't know if like, did he take some of it and adapt it for a purpose, which is valid. It's a perfectly valid thing for people to do. Or did both Crowley and him get influenced by some previous source that's older? There hasn't been some... I haven't seen the evidence yet that convinces me of that case, but I don't think it matters either way, one way or the other. If someone's getting something out of it and it's working, great, more power to you.
not?
Like,
Yeah.
do it, you know?
Yeah.
But it's a difficult thing, and I understand why a lot of people have tension towards any system that makes a claim. Not just the one, you know, any system that makes a claim, and it's a difficult claim to prove.
True.
You know?
Very true.
Yeah, it makes it complicated. But I still respect them.
Me
I
too.
do. I love them and respect them. Especially since, like, you know, that's where I started. You know, it's a fantastic starting spot.
It is.
Because it's so... They've taken some of the basics and really, really, really fleshed them out. It's like the elements is a perfect example. I've never met a community that dives so deep into the elements that the Wiccan traditions do. And that, excuse me, and that really helped me to have that base foundation as I was learning other symbols and growing from that point. So I definitely respect it and have taken quite a bit from it.
Me too. I teach elemental witchcraft.
Oh, that's interesting. What does that mean?
That means working and partnering with the elements.
Yeah. Okay.
Definitely.
Do you want to do a dive into some of the specifics on the elements? You want to do some, like, we talk a little bit about the basics, or
Sure.
okay.
We can.
So the elements being earth, air, fire, and water.
And spirit.
Okay. And fifth, spirit. Okay. Fire being
Hot, fiery, passionate.
Yeah.
All the correspondences to fire would be Mars, and anything that's red. The herbs go into correspondences along with the elements. So there's a list.
Yeah, and the herb that kind of comes to mind when I think about fire is cinnamon, because it's like hot. Or like peppers, like capsaicin being like very hot heat,
Flowing, yeah.
Yeah,
definitely.
absolutely. Yeah. And then water being like a category that includes more
healing,
kind of like the
flowing,
opposite,
Yeah.
Yeah. Flood blues, yeah. Where one's more reds. So when you're doing like elemental works, and I don't want to take up our whole time just talking about elements, but when you're doing elemental workings, you're taking one of the four symbols, and what are you doing with it? You're
actually working with all of them.
Oh, all four of them at the same time.
All four of
is your
them
preference.
basically at the same time.
Okay. Yeah.
It has to be balanced.
Yeah, I like that.
If you believe that you're working with them, then you need to work with them balanced.
Sure.
So that one doesn't get, I'm going to say, pissed and screw you or whatever.
Well, I mean, life is about balance in general.
Right.
The idea that, like, okay, if I'm gonna be a slightly more passionate person, I should probably tend to that by also being more practical at the same time. Don't let yourself get out of control by toppling off of the top of whatever you're on.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So all of them need to be you need to partner with all of them.
That's smart.
Equally.
Yeah, I like that a lot. One practice that I do that's elemental in nature is the lesser banishing ritual, the pentagram.
Yeah.
I do that one pretty regularly.
Right.
In more than one form, some people stick with just the script as it's written. Some people will change out some of the symbols so it's slightly less Judeo-Christian with its symbols. I've done both. They both seem to be pretty effective for me. But that one has the four elements represented in it. And it is, to exactly what you're talking about, it is a ritual of balancing out all four of those, and working with all four of them at the same time. So I can say from my personal experience with that, and it having been a very positive and building up experience, I would agree that what you're saying is true. That working with all four elements in a balancing form. Although I wouldn't necessarily say that you have to. And I also wouldn't say, like, oh, we're warning you, don't just do a ritual of just water. Like, well, if you're going to, if you really, really need some water energy in your life and you're not, like, really lacking in some others because you're actually trying to find balance in that thing, I don't necessarily think it's wrong to just work with one either. But I would say in general, all four in balance works really well.
Right.
Really well.
A circumference of your life or your path or whatever. Yeah. But working with individual elements, occasionally, or, when you need some
Yeah.
of that, water, of course, all of them, will be fine, I think.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So what does that look like? You're working with them. I know my preferences. I'm a showman. When in high school, I was really involved in like theater and drama and those kind of things. I'm a showman in that way. And my family has always been very close to Broadway and the stage. My grandfather, my grandmother on my father's side, my father, really everyone on my dad's side of the family, his brothers, like everybody.
Wow.
At some point was involved in some kind of either stagehand or performance art or those kind of things. We've always been like, many of them stagehands. Many. My father still to this day is a stagehand and working.
That's cool.
Yeah,
I like that.
It's a fun thing, It's a weird family tradition. My first job out of high school was, working in a theater, just kind of behind stage and stuff. And then after I kind of got off on my own, I did like circus arts and performance and those kind of things. And I got a lot out of it. I was really positive. Weirdly dark, you don't expect the circus to be such a dark place, but I'm okay with the darkness.
I like the circus.
Yeah.
I like macabre.
It's
I like
fun.
the stripes.
Exactly,
I like
the
that.
macabre. Yeah,
Yes.
that's that darkness that I'm talking. It's the macabre. It's not darkness for the sake of like evil. It's
No,
macabre,
it's macabre.
It's
I
a
love
good
it.
word for it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So all of those kind of life experiences have led me to like feel like a showman in a lot of ways. And that influences how I choose to go about workings. Because I want to be like flashy and boisterous with it.
Right.
I want to like stand in the middle with my arms raised. I
Right.
like that aspect and I bring that energy into it. And then, I've got friends who they're very calm, meditative, and their workings include sitting, calm, meditation, holding a symbol in their mind. And both of those things are perfectly valid.
Right.
And they're working for both of us.
Yes.
And I'm like, oh, this is great, And I've even, experimented with their styles and found them to be very beneficial towards my growth in my life. So every time somebody says, oh yeah, I'll do a working on this one thing or this, I'm always like, how? Because
Right.
there's different types of people and some of us are influenced so heavily by our past and some of us are influenced by our personalities. And so like when you light up a candle and you're doing something for some specific gain, or when you're like, I'm going to do a ritual with all 4 elements and they're in balance. What does that look like? If we were to go home right now, I'm in my home, but if we were to go home right now and be
Right.
like, hey, let's do a working according to what Wovi says has been working for her. What would you do?
I'm more theatrical too.
You're theatrical.
Yeah,
Okay.
definitely. And I would go outside and holler.
Okay.
And stand out there and say, air, this is me, help me, join me in this circle or
Yeah.
whatever. Help me achieve this goal. So mote it be, hey, yeah,
Okay.
definitely. And I would breathe in, and wait for air to hit me in the face.
Okay.
And so I tell my students that too. I said, don't go out there and just say, hey, hail air, welcome, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
No, I want you to call that air, I want it to hit you in the face. I want it to blow you down.
You want to feel the wind on your face. Okay.
Yeah. Same way with all of
Absolutely.
the others, So you got to like stand out there. I'm not really, my neighbors get pissed at me.
I'm sure they do.
But
People are pretentious. Don't mind them.
and I don't do it naked anymore because they call the cops on me. But
Do they really? In your
yes.
backyard? Is it legal in the state to be naked in your backyard?
Well, only if nobody can see you, I think. But, I don't know. My neighbors can see me, so.
That's a good question. I think it depends on the state that you live in.
I think so.
And obviously, this is on the internet. Like, there could
Yeah.
be someone listening in another country, So always check your local bylaws.
Right.
But, I know, I do know people that own land.
Mm-hmm.
And it's off in the middle of the woods. And it's like, there's only one road in and one road out.
Mm-hmm.
And nobody's out there.
That's good.
And they will do nude ritual.
Yes.
And there's nothing wrong with that,
Right.
I'm not saying that they bring kids up that day.
No.
It's an adult scenario where, everyone's over to, 21 or whatever.
Yes.
And, okay, great. And nudity, not really a big deal in those
Right.
kind of situations. In your backyard in the middle of a metropolitan area, a little different. Depends entirely on your local bylaws, how your relationship is with your neighbors.
Right.
Their views on things, if if their neighbor's son isn't out in the backyard, and he's like, "Mom, there's a naked lady in her backyard." Are they going to be like, "Ah, it's just Wovie, she's out of her mind," or are they going to be like, "Oh, let's call the police"? You
right.
know? Yeah.
No, they would just say, "Oh, that's just Wovie again." Don't look.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that, I don't think. I think it can be empowering in specific scenarios.
Well, the theatrical part is inspiring to yourself too.
Yeah.
But there's the Aborigines, there's the Native American. They jump and powwow and hurrah and do all kinds of stuff, and that increases the power.
They're like out there clapping and jumping and getting loud and
that
excited.
Increases the power, increases all of our powers together,
right? You're
to
building
get it
something up in an area,
to get it to the universe, out there to the source.
Okay, so you're more of the boisterous, loud, high energy type.
Mm-hmm.
That definitely makes sense. Like I said, I've had friends who are the more meditative type, and for them, they want the opposite. They want calm, quiet, closed space. I'm the theatric type, but I also don't like being in my backyard because I feel like, or other people's backyards, to be honest, I feel like peering eyes of their neighbors, the judgmental, like, oh, what are they, are just a distraction to me.
Yeah.
And I don't feel like there's anything that I'm doing that's like wrong, because I've been around this circle for long enough to know the difference between right and wrong, and I'm okay with where I'm at. I feel like I'm doing right, but at the same time, I also don't want just the drama that comes with, oh, so and so's neighbor was upset because there was some backyard ritual. That being said, today before this, I was in a backyard ritual. Oddly enough, we were practicing for the Gnostic Mass, the local body of the Order Templari Orientis. Now that COVID restrictions are being lifted and those kind of things, we're getting prepared to have regular public ritual again. And so one of the things we were doing was ritual in someone's backyard in order to kind of just get prepared for doing it more regularly. So I think there's something to be said about getting past that feeling of peering eyes. But like one time I was at a friend's house, my friend reached out to me and he was like, "Hey, I'm not feeling very well. It's kind of serious. I wondered if you would come out and do like something for my health."
Right.
And I was like, absolutely under a couple circumstances, like number one, you also, go to a doctor. I definitely don't.
Of course.
Yeah, I don't encourage people to be like, "Hey, yeah, we're going to do magical ritual," and then don't go to a doctor. No. This is something that we do on top of your regular mundane solutions. Right. Doesn't matter if it's health or otherwise. If you're going to, try to attract wealth, one of the best ways to do that is to open a business or do something mundane, like empower it with magic. But, so in this case, I was like, well, you have to go to a doctor, but I will absolutely come out and do that for you. Went out there, and then like halfway through the ritual, the neighbor across the back fence is like staring at us. And he's got that look in his eye like, those bad people.
Oh my gosh.
And he sat and watched the rest of the ritual. And I was like, we're not going to stop. Like we're halfway through, this ritual in the backyard. We're definitely going to finish. But like, God, is it a bother for someone to just be staring into my, spiritual practice?
Could you invite him in?
It wouldn't have been appropriate.
I would say, "Yo, dude, come on over."
Yeah, I could have, I suppose. That's one. Yeah, you might be more wise than me. He would have been gone just immediately. Like, I'm out. Yeah, I don't know what he would have done. I imagine that he would have been offended. There you go. Here, can you hold this sword?
Right.
Yeah, that's funny.
I would do that now.
So, do you have like specific, so you light up a candle, you're trying to draw a specific type of energy into your life. Let's say it's, what's the most common? Let's say either money or love are the two most common things.
True, yeah. I've been doing some work. There was a rush on people calling me, and I have no idea. It's like somebody like lit up my name or my phone number, and all of these people
like your name is on a forum somewhere now. 30 people are calling you. Yeah.
And it was all kinds of stuff, and this one person was from California, and she wanted this boyfriend back.
Yeah.
And he left her and everything like this.
Yeah.
And so if somebody's from California listening, there's like 10 or 20 of them, so it doesn't matter.
Oh, there's probably more than 10 or 20.
Well, that
California's
I
a huge
worked
state.
with anyway.
Oh, I got you. Yeah.
And so I said, okay, I can open the lines of communication. I can't just, tell you, and you have to do the mundane stuff first. You have to knock on the door. You have to text them.
Where's the ethical line there? Because I think that it's perfectly ethical for us to use magic in order to invite an abstract into our lives. For us to say, I am hurting because I don't have an emotional partner, and I need a relationship, and I'm going to open just abstractly to the universe and be like, I'm ready for love to enter my life.
Yes, right.
In whatever form that comes. I'm ready to do that.
I'm ready.
That to me is perfectly ethical, and I'm okay with that as a magical ritual. When an individual goes, I want John back, or I want John that I've never been with, and there's like an individual in their mind, male, female, doesn't matter. That to me feels icky, because in that situation, if you asked me to force them back to you, it would be the magical equivalent of a date rape drug.
I believe that too.
Yeah.
I really do. I also, but you can open the area or the spectrum.
Sure.
In an area of vision, I guess.
Right.
So it's like you and me, we're here, we see each other and everything like that. You can increase the situation, I guess.
Sure. And then they could use mundane measures. They could
right.
say, hey, John, I've been thinking about it. I really miss you. I'm sorry. Can we work on some of this? Can we and that other individual still has their free will in that scenario where they can go, you know what? You're right. I do or do want to go, but they can also say like, Susan, you hurt me, I'm out. As long as you're maintaining their right to their free will, I don't have a problem with it.
Well,
the second that it's like, I'm bringing that one person back, then I'm like, oh, this is icky. This makes me uncomfortable.
Plus, opening the lines of communication means both ways.
Absolutely. Yep.
So she got him back. He did contact her, but he also contacted her in regards to never wanting to see her again.
Oh, geez.
And so she didn't like me anymore. But hey, the lines of communication were open.
Right.
He contacted her. He said bye.
Yeah. Well, and closure is a powerful thing, Mm-hmm. Yeah. I would strongly suggest, in general, anybody that's the recipient of magic, I feel like the people who are casting the magic, we've already learned our damn lessons.
Right.
Many of us have made the mistakes or been around friends who made the mistakes. And we've learned a little bit of perspective on like what's ethical, what's not ethical, the consequences of our actions. And we tend to be a little bit more reserved on certain things, Yes. But I think there's something to be said about like if you're approaching somebody to do magic for you, in the case of you took a client and they're coming to you for a specific thing, take a second. Really ask yourself what the healthiest way to ask what you're about to ask is, because you just might get it. And you would hate to word it in a way or to visualize it in a way that becomes destructive or unethical or toxic in your own life. Like really take a minute and go, what's the healthiest thing for me to do here? Because if I ask for it, it might show up.
Right.
That's a lesson I had to learn the hard way a couple of times.
I've learned that lesson a long time. Yes.
Yep.
I just don't want to deal with that anymore.
Absolutely. Okay, so we've touched on a lot of really great stuff. What's the spookiest thing that's ever happened to you? You can define spooky however you want. What's the spookiest thing?
Oh man,
It's gotta be something that comes to mind.
I'm trying to think. There's all kinds of weird stuff.
I know. Same. Like crazy things happen.
And it's kind of normal now.
I know. That's what I'm talking about, Yeah.
Let me see.
Which one makes a good story? What's your favorite campfire spooky story that's something that happened to you?
Okay, so when I was living in Alaska.
Whereabouts in Alaska?
Skagway.
I don't know where Skagway is at.
It's in the Lynn Canal. It's southeast.
Okay. I've been to Anchorage and I've been up to Igigik. and King Salmon and some of that area.
The cruise ships go to Skagway.
Gotcha.
And it's the last stop. And then
Okay.
it goes back up the canal. There's a hotel there that's specifically haunted.
Okay.
I don't want to say a whole bunch, but a woman died in the gold rush. They had the Chilkoot Pass.
Okay.
And the Chilkoot Pass was a gold thing.
Yep.
And people would come down there and get gold. And the woman's husband to be was died, I guess, but
Okay.
she didn't know it. So she stayed in the hotel room until she died for him, waiting for him. Anyway, in this hotel room, weird things happen. The water fills up the bathtub at night.
Like it just turns itself on.
Just turns
fills up?
itself on, and I
Okay.
witnessed that stuff.
Wait. So
You
you
know.
stayed in that hotel room and the bathtub filled up?
Yes,
What?
yes.
Okay.
And the fire hoses in the hall room
Yeah.
would fling off into the hallway from being stacked up on the shelf.
Oh, okay.
The doors would slam and everything like this. Oh, but the spooky thing about all of this, and I had to just do that kind of backstory.
Of course.
The rocking chair would rock, and so the maids of the housekeepers of the hotel would never go in that room or anything.
Okay.
But the spooky thing was there was a big window on the third floor, and of course the third floor is closed in the wintertime. When I first came there, I saw this woman on the third floor looking out the window. And so a couple of weeks after that, I mentioned that to one of the persons that worked there. I said, yeah, I saw a woman on the third floor. And they go, what? Oh, the third floor is closed. Nobody lives there.
No one's allowed to be on the third floor because
right.
it's winter. Oh my
And
god.
I swear, and so that was the spooky part.
Yeah.
Was I actually saw this woman up there. Of course, I've seen different spirits now.
Yeah,
This-
I've
that
had a
was-
couple of times in my life where like I had one period of time where I was just absolutely emotional wreck. There was just so much negative in my life, and I knew that I was going to make it past it. But like everything, I felt like in my soul, I felt haunted. Everything was so negative in that period, and there was a solid week where like out of the corner of my eye, I'd see stuff, and it'd either be like a shadow or like very disturbing things. Like one time in that week, I was in the mall. And out of the corner, it's always in the corner of my eye, and I see it. I recognize what it is. I look at it in shock. I turn my eyes towards it in shock, and it's like, nope, normal thing.
Right.
It's not really there. And I'm like, but I just clearly saw that it
it.
was, you know? And
Right.
it's kind of exists in that weird space between like, well, I saw it, and man, it was out of the corner of my eye. I don't know. There was one in the mall where a woman bent over and was vomiting bees.
Oh, man.
And this was in the middle of that emotional turmoil of like feeling like just a lot of negative dark. And I remember I had already seen things that week. So I was just like, okay, I'm not even going to look at it. I'm just going to kind of watch it in the corner. And I watched it for a while out of the corner of my eye. Long enough that I was like, this is, yeah. And then I'm going to turn my eyes. And I was saying to myself, like, I'm going to turn my eyes and it's going to be gone. And I did, and it was gone. I was like, you've got to be fucking shitting me.
Right.
Regular ass person dropped their keys, bent over, and fucking picking something up. But there's something to be said about that. Like those experiences. I don't know. I definitely don't think they're the point of the occult. But like, fuck, we all have a spooky story.
Well, you know what? Our brains are so much more than what we really think they are.
I agree.
And
Yep. Now
I
you're
always-
talking my language.
Yeah. I always tell people, video games
Okay.
is a total analogy of what I'm going to say.
Okay.
When my daughter plays video games, I don't play them, so I don't actually know, but she's a high wig video game player.
Okay.
And there'll be people, other characters in this game
Yep.
that run across the screen and go down this other thing. And I want to know who those people are.
Yeah.
And she tells me, she says, Mom, those are just other players. Other players what? Where? When? What are they doing?
Okay.
She goes, there's other people in different places, like other countries or anything like that. And he's playing the game the same as I, and I'm going this way, he's going that. So you don't know that person, right?
Right.
Right. So I finally figured this out. But so here we are in our brains, and our brains astral travel. We astral travel unbeknownst to us in our sleep or anything like that.
Yep.
So my theory is, and it's a good theory, is that because our brains are so encompassed of doing what they want to do when and we don't know, we are experiencing different astral travelers, I guess.
Okay.
In this realm.
That you're kind of picking up on it.
Right.
It's like the radio receiver has a little bit of distortion from the next channel over.
And that person is astral
Yeah.
traveling past you.
Right.
Going wherever they need to
You
go.
become aware of it.
Right. And you just are
Yeah.
in that right vibration too, by being able to see it. And we don't necessarily, the dead doesn't necessarily come to us. They don't come to us.
Right.
We go to them. We accidentally fall into their, like, there's an open door and you just fall in every once in a while and see the dead.
Yeah.
It's like house hauntings and everything. No, you accidentally fell into some form
Well,
of
and I think there's something to be said that, like,
vibration.
not all of these experiences have to be real for them to be valid.
That's right.
Like, for example, in my particular situation, like, I was under a lot of emotional turmoil. And it's possible that my brain was trying to symbolically say, hey, dude,
Yeah.
there's something very extreme going on emotionally for you right now. And I'm going to, like, wire up some symbol for a moment. And hopefully we can get this message to you that, like, you're being haunted by this emotional state.
Because that's what our brains do. They
Totally.
fill in the information.
And does that make 100% of supernatural things invalid? No, of course
No,
not. Like,
it
there can
doesn't.
be ones that are like, wow, that was pretty extreme and probably just my subconscious. And there can be other ones where I'm like, oh, no, that one was definitely real. And we, have to cope now with this new vision of what we consider to be reality. You know?
Yep.
That's kind of the adventure for me in a lot of ways, is that I have had very extreme experiences in the occult that I did have to later unpackage. And some of them went in the basket of, it was not real, but it was intense, and there's something valuable by understanding that my brain can do that. And some of them went in the basket of, something supernatural just happened, and I'm going to have to cope with that new reality.
Right.
And both baskets over the years are starting to look pretty full. I'm going to be honest.
Yep.
Yeah.
You're going to have to deal with them.
I feel like I have by sorting them. I don't know.
That's good.
Yeah. I feel healthy and happy.
Get a bigger basket.
I need bigger baskets.
Bigger basket.
I need to be open to there being
Yes.
more. Yeah, you got it. That's it. I need some bigger baskets. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so, like, when I was a kid, I had a really intense personal experience. This is my first memory. The first time that my brain formed a memory, it was of a supernatural experience. So I remember, and my mother tells this story to her friends on occasion. So I know that I didn't make it up, because I have the memory. I have my own interpretation of it. It's not the same as her interpretation, which is very key in my mind, because otherwise I would just be picking it off of her story or something, like, creating a false memory, because that's a
Right.
problem, right? I have a slightly different interpretation of it from my own memory. And she tells her friends all the time. And basically what happened was, when I was in the crib, I was still in a crib when this happened. I remember the room getting kind of dark and cold and creepy. And this hand that was, like, decrepit, reaching up from underneath the bed and, like, feeling around. And it grabbed my teddy, pulled it out underneath the bed. And then it came back up and it was feeling around my sheets and it was grabbing that, and I was screaming. I was like, I was scared this thing was trying to get me. I knew that it was malicious. And when I screamed, there was this bright flash of light, and there was a positive, I kind of attribute it to being more of an angelic force, like some positive light being of protection. I don't know that I believe in, like, what we would consider the traditional
Guardian angel.
Yeah, I don't know that I believe quite in that route, although I might. I'd be open to that as an interpretation. But I had, like, some entity entered the room, was standing in a specific spot in the room. The whole room filled with light, and the decrepit hand fled underneath the bed and disappeared.
Wow.
And then my mother came in and turned the lights on, and everything was gone.
Oh, man.
And I remember this very intensely. And she tells this story to her friends of, like, this moment of, like, and I know that I was awake because there was no, like, separation in it. And then I don't have another memory for a year. Like, there's, like, a whole solid year of, like, and I was learning about, like, how memory works. And, like, the reality is, if you have an extremely traumatic event, you can form a memory before your brain normally starts to form memories.
Right.
My first memory is this dark thing trying to get me and some, positive thing trying to protect me. And I sometimes look back on that. And what's been interesting is having other friends who also that are in the occult community, having some kind of an experience, definitely not the same for each individual, but some kind of a thing where at some point in their life, something spooky happens, something outside of the realm of what you would normally be able to explain. And it starts this giant question in the mind of what is and what is not possible. And they start seeking that and eventually find themselves in the magical traditions because they're trying to answer this giant question of what the fuck happened.
Yeah.
For me, that's the one that's like, what the hell happened? I haven't been able to quite recreate those conditions since that moment.
Yeah.
Do you have anything that spawned your interest? Was it something intense like that? Was it just, hey, I found a book. I read a book and it was interesting, or I knew a person and they were, would you say you had like, is your origin story, your X-Men origin story, is it like, is it like a tragic one, an intense one? Is it just, I found a book and it was interesting?
Actually,
what got you started?
It was in my teens.
Okay.
And a girlfriend of mine, she was practicing witchcraft.
Okay.
And back then, this was in the 60s, 70s?
Yeah.
This was in the 70s, well, 60s. And she was going to go to Michigan and be part of the 13 Witches. And that kind of spurred my inspiration. And I started, I didn't find any books. I had to like really search. There was no internet, library books and everything. So it just kind of grew natural for me to want to create magic around me by any way means possible that I felt I could do.
Right.
And so that's how I started.
Yeah. So you started because someone around you had been interested in it. This is this is another really common origin story. There's only a couple of them. I've noticed they're archetypal almost. You have the individual that has a mass. I don't understand what happened. I have to figure it out. That's number one. Number two is someone around me was doing witchcraft and I didn't immediately recoil from it.
Right.
There was like, hey, that's interesting. I don't know much about that. I got exposed to it in that way. Here's a weird question. This is only because of my own personal experiences with it. Did your friend continue doing witchcraft? Or did they stop?
No, she stopped.
That's the thing.
That's
why I asked. It's so weird because your origin story, that archetypal story, every time someone tells me that one, the person that stopped doing magic is the one that inspired you.
Right.
And then you keep going after the fact. I know like 8 people that had that same thing happen.
I hear that too.
It's weird.
It is weird.
There's patterns to it. It's strange,
Well, it's crossing paths and everything.
Yeah.
It's just cool. I think it's cool.
I think it's incredible.
Definitely.
Yeah. One of the things that for me has been incredibly meaningful is that there are others around me who have relatable experiences enough that I find, I don't know, I don't feel alone in the occult.
Oh,
There's a sense of a community.
Yeah. I
a lot
feel
of
that
people.
too. Although when and it's grown because when I moved to Boise, of course I'm from Idaho, but I went around. I've been all over the place. But I moved back to Boise in 2005, and I tried to find people, like-minded people.
Yeah.
Anybody.
Yeah.
There was none that I could find. I'm sure there was, but I couldn't find them. So I decided to create a group.
Right.
Then when I made the group, when I got the group, then everybody was all excited and saying, yeah. But then I would say, well, let's do this. And they'll go, okay, yeah, but I don't know how to do that. Somebody has to show me how to do that.
Right.
So I had this massive amount of people not knowing what to do, but they just liked the idea. And so now I had these people I needed to show them how to do in order to do what I wanted to do.
Right.
It was like kind of weird.
Absolutely.
But now
it's
there's
valid.
lots of people.
There's
around.
a ton of people.
There's a ton of people.
And I'm not sure if it's just because the internet is bringing people together that wouldn't normally. Because I don't. Outside of meeting someone because I was a member of a magical group and someone was introduced to the magical group. Outside of that, I don't know how many people I've actually met in person where I've just been like, strolling along. Oh, hey, what's up? Oh, it's nice to meet you. Hey, I like the occult. Oh, me too.
Right.
Like most of the time it's been like, oh, hey, there's some forum, some internet fascination, some group, some, and that being said, I'm not surprised that with the way that the internet has been integrated into everything, now suddenly there's a community, not only that, there's entire website, there's a podcast. Here we are. We're having a podcast about the occult, and there's enough people interested in it that people are listening to it.
Right.
You know? That to me is fascinating because there was a point. I've got a friend, he's I would probably guess like 10, 15 years older than you. Lives down in the Salt Lake area. And his opinion of it, I remember talking to him very early on as I was getting interested in stuff for the first time. And he was like, yeah, man, when we first started, there weren't magical shops. There was books, and it would be like, hey, use this herb and this herb. And you would have to like go buy a botany book. What is that? Is your phone?
My phone.
Gotcha. You have to like go buy a botany book, learn what that plant is, learn what plants are similar to it, because you're not going to find that one in your climate. You have to find something that's similar to it. You'd have to go on a hike for 7 hours. You'd have to find the plant that's similar to it, that's in your locale. You'd have to pick it up, and then, then you could do your magical working. And it's like nowadays, there's 15 shops in the area. And all I have to do is like, which one's closest to me? I can Google it. And I can be like, where do I buy herbs and incense and shit?
Yeah.
And then I just travel over there, and there's like people in the store. It's not just the person behind the counter. There's like 8 people in that store at any given moment, because they're a business like any other business.
Yep. Which is cool.
It's fascinating. It's awesome.
Yes.
That like people are getting interested in this, because I think that it's a valid... There's something to be said about it being a valid potential for the individual empowerment and personal growth of the individual.
Well, there's a lot of people searching for something that's not what they have. And I think that because they're searching has opened up the paganism aspect
Absolutely.
of their lives. Yeah. It's important for people to I personally think people are just remembering. I think rather than searching, I think they're remembering, and they need to fulfill that remembrance.
Right. I think there's something to be said about being able to identify what those things are that you're missing in your life based on what you're, like, where you're finding yourself. Like, for example, the United States is having this this revival of Norse paganism. I had a friend the other day reach out to me, doesn't know that I'm an occultist at the time. I told him, I went to college with him. I kept the occult stuff out of college because I didn't want to be that guy. I just wanted to work on college, keep my life separate, absolutely. And so I have a lot of close friends that don't know that I practice, which is weird for me because just about all of my other friends are, because we met at occult shit, and they, I can't imagine both of those things being true, but they are. And he reaches out to me. He's like, hey, I'm starting to get, involved in this thing, and it's Norse paganism, and he was like, not sure if I was going to accept him. And I'm like, dude, you're totally fine. I was Norse pagan like 4 years ago. Like, I think the first time you met me, I had a Mjolnir on. Like I had a Thor's hammer necklace on. Like it's fine. And but those communities, for example, are very in the United States. Now, this isn't true in Scandinavia and in some of the other areas that traditionally have practiced these things. But in the United States, there's this heavy sense of community being one of the driving factors for Norse paganism in the United States. And that to me says the American lifestyle, our communities are dying. We don't have as much community. We're hurting for it. People are going out to find it somewhere. They're finding it in spirituality. They're finding it in paganism. They're finding it in Norse traditions. And they're finding it in those communities. And they're going, and they're bonding with those people. Exactly. Yeah. And I think that's true for a lot of things. Like some of the more Dianistic Wiccan traditions, there's a very heavy centralism around like modern feminist ideals, and there is something about, our culture leaving certain individuals disempowered, and they find that empowerment in there, and then they go, oh, wow, this is really good. This is for me. Right. I think you can kind of tell what the American lifestyle is lacking by looking at where people are, craving and where they find themselves. What do you think? I suppose this might be too deep of a question. I don't know. What are you getting out of What are you getting out of voodoo? If you even can summarize it that simply.
The bonding with other people. I think that it resonates so much with me. It's been with me a long time.
Yep.
And it's something that has clicked that works.
Yeah.
I guess, it's searching through all of this, all my years of practice and everything. It's something that has just kicked some of this stuff and like kicked my magic in the butt. It kind of works, definitely.
Yeah. Okay.
The dead.
Do you want to talk about the dead?
We're
It's an occult podcast. We can talk about whatever you want.
we can talk about the dead.
What in particular are you getting out of your relationships with the dead, and what does that look like in practice?
It's the same way. I guess it's the same way with any deity that you work with.
Yeah.
They're all dead, I guess. Some of the dead that I work with have been alive, per se.
Yeah. What do you mean by alive? Alive
like
as in
living on the earth, I guess.
okay. Generally speaking, if I were to divide up living and dead, I would say dead doesn't have corporeal form.
Right.
So like I have a body, I'm alive. Whereas if I were to maintain consciousness after my death in some form of afterlife, I would consider myself to be dead, not alive, even though a lot of times, to be fair to my own definitions, we often associate being alive with being aware.
Aware, yeah.
And in the case of like a ghost or spirit,
There's
if they're
possession.
aware, yeah. So where does that all fall? Like, I suppose we need two things. We need a definition of like, what do you mean by the dead? And when you're working with them, what does that look like? Are you like, I don't know, are you having like dreams where they're coming to you? Are you doing a working where you're inviting them into the space and you feel a presence and then you do your working and move on? Are you doing like, you're walking around town and like see something? Like, what does that actually manifest in your particular experience when you say I'm working with the dead?
Well, first of all, you don't want to let them know that you can see them.
Oh, don't look at them. Don't make eye contact. I'm terrible at that. I yell at them all the time.
Well, yeah.
Anytime something's in my space, I tell it to leave, and it does.
Well,
They
yes, if that
Yeah.
that's an aspect too, like where they're invading your space. You definitely
Yeah, I
have
don't
to
like
tell
them in
them
my
to
space.
leave and
The altar
not,
draws them.
Yeah.
It draws them all the time. This happens all the fucking time. The altar. I keep a full-size altar in my house, and it attracts shit like fucking flies to honey.
Right.
Like about once every other month, I'll be half asleep. I'll wake up. Something will be near it. And I'll be like, you get out right now. And usually it does immediately.
Then that's good.
Yeah,
That's good.
hopefully,
Definitely.
right.
Yeah. And I do that too. They're not allowed, in
I don't let
my
my friends
living
touch my shit either. to be
No, I
fair.
won't. No. Yeah.
Like if you tried to touch my altar, I'd probably ask you to leave.
Right. Well, and that's
Yeah.
I'm totally in
Yeah.
agreement with that. Yeah.
Right.
You don't want anybody else's energy there.
Yeah, it's my space.
Yeah.
I would accept my significant other to use a mutual altar
Most
space.
generally, they wouldn't do it anyway. My significant other
Yeah.
would go, "Babe, there's a rock over here. Do you want it?"
Right.
Like, "What's it doing? It's a loose rock."
Right.
No problem, babe. I'll get it.
Yeah.
They won't. He never touched it.
Does he practice?
No, he
Okay.
doesn't. He just lets me do it.
You know, it's really weird. That's pretty common too. It's not to say that nobody has a practitioner as their significant other, but it's pretty damn common that one person in the relationship is and one person is not.
Not, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what it is that causes that. Or like I know someone, I don't want to out them, but I know someone who is married who they and their significant other were both in initiatory systems together back in the day. And then they got married. One of them entered a career where they needed to not have that kind of stuff in their life. And so they stopped practicing and the other one stayed in it. So the other one, so like one of the two people in the relationship is like actively practicing magic on a regular basis. And the other one hasn't practiced in 20 years.
Wow.
Doesn't touch any of it.
Wow.
And so it's like super common in my mind for
Yeah.
like, or like my significant other, I'm polyamorous. So I have, multiple, the one that I've had the longest, She doesn't practice. She reads up a little bit. She wants to like kind of understand. And so she has like a generalized conception of what workings look like. She herself doesn't practice. It's weird. I don't know what it is.
I don't know either, because that's true to me too.
But I suppose if like it, I mean, I guess we all make our own rules about what we consider to be okay with our altars. I suppose if my significant other wanted to use the altar, it wouldn't offend me. Because there's some of that like Lord and Lady, God and Goddess, me and you kind of duality that exists there.
Right.
And I'd probably be okay with that.
Has to be balanced.
Has to be back to balance.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. All right. I think I feel like I derailed the answer though. I don't remember exactly where we left off. But we were talking about what does your working look like when you are working with the dead. So you don't look at them.
Well, the dead that I don't know.
The dead that you don't know.
Yeah,
you don't look at. Okay.
yeah.
So the dead that you do know, do you physically see them or do you feel their presence?
I feel their presence. I don't physically see them, but some of that's different too with possessions.
Okay.
Or you invite your Loa to or your Gede or anybody to join you in the situation and the workings, and they help you, give you blessings, talk to you, tell you things. It's a possessions is easier because that way they can speak and
sure
to you.
Absolutely.
And
I can see
like that.
I can see the appeal. I don't tend to fuck with that for free will purposes.
Right.
I have Thelema in specific is very, very, very oriented around the individual's free will being something of divine nature, and that anything that leads to the ultimate goal of the free will not being, in full force, being avoidable. So, like for example, individuals generally won't drink to the point that they are incoherently unable to control themselves. Right. Might be something that a Thelemite chooses to do. But then again, it goes back to that choice thing.
The choice,
I can't tell you what Thelemites do because they all have their own different fucking opinions on shit.
Well, and it's perception too.
Yeah.
Definitely.
So generally speaking, we don't fuck with possessions or hypnotism or those kind of things. Individuals might make choices otherwise, but the group as a whole seems to be down that road. I know certain traditions of Wicca have like the concept of like horsing, where like I'm sorry, I think my voice broke up a little bit. Horsing being like the entity, spirit, whatever the thing is that you're working with, entering the self and making its presence known, but the practitioner is in control. Generally speaking, the word that I would use for you not being in control is possession. I think is that where your line is as well? Is that where your definition is?
Yeah, that's a little bit like it. You go to you realize what's happening and you are in agreement with that.
Okay.
But your guardian is going to take care of you. Your guardian is not going to let harm come to you.
So you have a third party in the exchange. So you have the spirit itself. You're protecting third party, which would be whatever entity that like a god or goddess kind of thing,
right?
Some protective thing,
guardian.
Or and then yourself being the third party in that. Okay.
Yeah, and
that's what protects
you
it from getting out of control.
Yeah.
So, like for example, something enters the situation. You've relinquished control, and then it does whatever the fuck it wants.
Right.
You have this third party entity that
protects you.
Is protecting you in that situation. The question okay, so I always like to imagine that this podcast is being listened to by two people. Number one has no idea what we're talking about.
Right.
And wants us to describe the super basics. And number two has absolutely knows all the shit that we're talking about because they've been practicing for 20 years. And they want to hear the new, interesting, information that's going to buzzword them up to the next level. You know what I mean? The person that doesn't know a whole lot is questioning how safe this is. Because we're talking about possession. So what is to stop your protective spirit from just being like, fuck, Wovi, I'm out? Is that just a relationship you build with the entity over time?
It's a relationship that you have. It's you were born with it. You were born with this protector, and they will never go away. It's
like a holy guardian angel kind of concept.
Right. Guardian, yeah, definitely.
Okay.
And it's there no matter what, even if you don't know it.
So everyone has one.
Everyone has one.
I have
one.
one.
Yeah.
Cool.
Everyone does.
In Thelema, we have a similar concept with the holy guardian angel, HGA.
Yeah.
Being this like entity that is tasked towards your own success.
Would be this, yeah.
Some individuals believe that to be an internal process, and some believe it to be like a separate entity, like a full-on separate entity. You're totally fine. And then I know that obviously like Christianity has a similar concept of like a guardian angel being assigned to each individual.
I really think every aspect or tradition, whatever it is in the human species, has
something to that effect.
Something to that effect.
I think
Whether that be just regular for our own belief system as human species, you know, we all need something like that in order for us to thrive in the community.
Well, and I'm always really interested in the things that are similar amongst religions, not as much interested in the things that are different amongst religions.
Right.
Because like, all right, you know, there's some different variety out there. Awesome. I'm glad that, you know, there's some of that. But when like, you know, when there's like an Indian tradition that's 5,000 years old over there on that side of the world that didn't have any contact with this other civilization on the other side of the world that's 5,000 years old, and they both came to a similar conclusion and use a similar symbol, I'm like, now hold the fuck up.
Right.
What is the symbol?
Right.
I want to learn about that. I want to work with that, you know? And so I'm always really drawn towards similarities more than I am differences. And that's definitely one of them, where there's like something there to protect you. Your interpretation could be that it's an angel, it could be that it's a spirit, it could be that it's an ancestor, it could be that it's a process in your own mind. Doesn't matter. There's something there.
It's still there.
Yeah. So you let something in. You have a protector to protect you in the situation. And then what does that look like? They impart you with wisdom. Do they go off and do something for you?
Whatever you're asking for, healing mostly, you know,
healing.
Definitely healing, doing any kind of magic or working with the, whatever it is, it helps accomplish what you're working with.
Yeah.
We have altars for them specifically.
Oh, okay, yeah. We do that too.
To feed them, you know. We have objects to help us, makudos to cleanse, everything like that.
What kind of objects? What's realistic as opposed to the Hollywood fascination with, you know,
candles.
Candles is a big one
herbs.
For you. Yep. I have chicken's feet. I still do the chicken's feet thing.
I have chicken feet too.
Yeah. And that like the idea is like that a lot of voodoo is powder based, and that's just traditionally over the years a lot of it has been powder based, and so if someone was trying to be naughty, they would, you know, sprinkle some powder and have you walk through it or those kind of things that you'd find along your daily path, and the idea that like the chicken that was running around in your front yard would, you know, its feet would scratch up the powder and like scatter it, and no longer would it be in that specific shape or whatever that they designated to try to get you. And so over the years it started to be this association of chicken's feet scratching away the bad, and now you take, you know, a chicken's foot, it's dried out, it's, you know, made shelf stable, and you like scratch your arm with it or whatever in order to get the negative energy away from you and the negative, you know. So that's definitely something that I can comprehend. I understand, you know, and a lot of my experience with voodoo has made me realize how much it is a tradition that to me seems often to be related to a general common sense of the lifestyle of a specific era, of being like, yeah, they're going to sprinkle powder there. Whatever, we keep chickens. You know, they're going to fucking scatter that shit. Oh, yeah, you're right, we do keep chickens. Or like, you know, there being like this, like hot foot powder is a good example. Being like, it's got like a lot of hot, heaty things. You would, you know, you're trying to get someone to leave your life, you know,
right?
And you'd sprinkle it somewhere where their feet would come in contact with it. And the best way that it was ever described to me was this woman that said, yeah, and it starts a fire under their feet and gets them out. And there's like that old timey saying of like, yeah, get a fire under their feet to get them up and out. And how much some of that old timey, it's period
a slave
common sense
religion.
Sure. Yeah. It's like a common sense of this time period, this particular group of people. And I think that most magic probably falls into a similar category of having like some kind of symbolic, reference towards some lifestyle common sense.
They use the Bible also.
Yeah.
Bibliomancy.
Do you use the Bible?
Bibliomancy.
Bibliomancy.
Yep.
Do you use the Bible?
Yes.
I do too.
Yes.
Oddly enough. Yeah. It's interesting. Not a lot of people in the occult world do. This is rare. As much as like there are 2 people in this conversation that do, there's a lot of people that don't.
I know.
To be fair to a lot of people, the ones that don't use it, growing up in the United States, there are a lot of Christians. Many of them, not all of them by any means, enough of them have been rude to members of other religions that many members of other religions have a chip on their shoulder about them. Now, I've met plenty of good people that don't fall into that category, that are just honest, happy, and just happen to be, practicing Christians, and I don't have problems against Christians. But a lot of people have felt rudeness and have now started to harbor ill will towards certain members of, Christian faiths. And so a lot of occultists don't like anything Christian. They're like, I don't want symbols of Christ. I don't want the Bible. I don't want, like those kinds of things, because they associate that with that emotional turmoil, that pain of being mistreated, but of someone being rude to them. I myself am kind of past that. I've gotten past it. I worked through it. I have felt the same way when I first got started, and now I don't feel it anymore.
Because you were not educated.
Yeah, well, I think that what it was I had my own personal growing to do, and eventually when I grew to a point where I said, yeah, there's other groups of people, and some of them have been rude to me in the past, but that doesn't mean that every individual is guilty of that sin in that community, and I need to let go of my toxic bullshit in order to grow. That's really where I started to drop the chip, is to be like, you know what, I'm going to treat each individual for their individual actions, and I'm not going to harbor this hate, because all it does is toxify myself. Harboring hate's terrible.
The Bible's a part of your tradition.
Yeah.
It's part of everybody's tradition, really.
To some extent.
Especially in the United States.
Yeah.
And that's okay. It's a tradition that needs to be studied. It needs to be known.
Yeah. I think it's positive. I think you can get things out of it. I don't think it's the sole source of positivity.
No.
That's where I feel like a lot of people fall short. In a Thelemic context, we do consider certain symbols, like in Book of Revelations, to be, of a Thelemic nature. Voodoo obviously uses certain kinds of bibliomantic practices. Psalms is another really popular one. Psalms is a set of verses that are all broken out into the Hebrew alphabet. If you know much about Kabbalah, you can use that one particular verse for that one particular letter to figure out where it is in the Kabbalistic tree of life.
Right.
And you can use that as a point of power in order to, generate results based on, your understanding of the Kabbalistic tree of life. So there's definitely like some options. I also really like mythology.
Yeah.
And so I don't have a problem with this one mythology, because it's like, that's an interesting way to go about it, to think about it, and to, it might not be mine, but shit, I can read it and pick something positive out of it, But I don't know. I want, with this show, to promote unity amongst all faiths. I want to promote the idea that, like, it doesn't matter if you're voodoo or if you're Christian. It's okay. And we support you, because I want to get past the toxic bullshit that is so-and-so is bad because insert religion. You know?
Me too.
We got to get past it, But, man, it's just weird that both of us do that. That's the Bible it's a rare one to get used in the occult. It is potent, though. It's very potent.
A lot of people don't read it.
A lot of Christians don't read it.
They'll
Yeah.
take sections. Yeah.
A lot of people that are actively practicing that faith do not actually take the time to read it. They
Right.
will get snippets force-fed to them from other individuals. Well, I think we've definitely hit on a lot of amazing topics. Is there anything in specific that you'd like to bring up to present to others as, some interesting thing they might look at? Do you want to plug yourself or any of your work? Do you have anything that you'd like the people to be able to reach out to you? We have a email address. I'm not sure how much it's going to get used. It is guest@whitewoodpodcast.com. And basically, if anybody got interviewed and somebody that listened to it wants to reach out and ask you a question, they can email guest@whitewoodpodcast.com.
Awesome.
And I'll pass it along.
Cool.
So there's definitely
Appreciate
that line
that.
of communication. But is there any topic that you'd like to bring to the table?
I think we talked to it. I really thank you for inviting me.
Awesome.
for
Yeah,
this.
we had a great time.
This was awesome. Definitely good
Yeah.
talk. I like that. I'm available to talk anything. I
And
teach.
potentially even to take clients, it sounds
Yeah,
like. You
I
take
take
them in more than
clients.
one location. Do you have like a website that you use in order to take clients?
Yes.
Would you like to plug it?
It's actually woventear.com,
Woventear.com. Okay.
but it's not up yet. It's being revamped.
In process of revamping
yeah.
it. Okay. Perfect.
But you can find me.
Sure.
Just Google me.
Yep. Find all those
Definitely.
atrocious things.
I know, definitely.
All right,
That's
perfect.
it. That's
Well,
it.
I appreciate your time. I really do. It was
Thank
a really
you.
good time.
Thank
It's
you.
good to catch up,
Yeah.
Thanks for listening to the Whitewood Podcast. This show is made possible by our Patreon members. You can find us on Twitter at Whitewood Show and on Facebook at Whitewood Podcast. For links to all our social media and information about our Patreon, visit us at whitewoodpodcast.com.